October 27, 2019. In the quiet darkness of the Syrian sky, 8 U.S. Special Operations helicopters were flying through the night, heading toward the village of Barisha. On board were the elite warriors of Delta Force and the Rangers, those chosen for a top-secret mission, to track down and eliminate Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the most wanted terrorist in the world. Inside the house, Baghdadi was sleeping with his wife and children, but tonight would certainly not be a peaceful night. At that moment, rotating fire from Hellfire missiles and miniguns mounted on the transport platforms opened fire, shooting directly at the guard positions in the west and southeast. The harsh explosions startled him awake. He fled like a wild animal that had lost its sense of direction. The CIA had spent more than $100 million and 5 years lurking in the shadows, and tonight that ghost would disappear once and for all. Al-Baghdadi's real name was Ibrahim Ibrahim al-Badri, born in 1971 into a devout family in Samarra, Iraq. He studied at the Islamic University of Baghdad, majoring in Islamic studies and Sharia law, and earned a doctorate in Islamic studies. Al-Baghdadi was known to be introverted, often preaching at a small mosque in Samarra. But after the Iraq War in 2003, everything changed. He abandoned the purely religious path to join the armed resistance movement against U.S. forces. In 2004, during a sweep operation in the Fallujah area, al-Baghdadi was captured and detained at Camp Bucca, a massive U.S. detention facility in southern Iraq near the Kuwaiti border. At that time, Camp Bucca held more than 20,000 prisoners, including extremists, Islamist fighters, and former officers of Saddam Hussein's army. It was there that he began building his network, learning how to lead, and planting the seeds of the nightmare later known as the Islamic State. A few months after his release, al-Baghdadi joined Al-Qaeda in Iraq, a branch of the international terrorist network founded by Osama bin Laden and led by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. From an obscure member, he quickly rose through the ranks, gathering and uniting fragmented insurgent groups into the organization known as the Islamic State of Iraq. He was particularly shrewd in combining religious ideology with the military tactics of former Saddam-era officers, creating an apparatus that was both theocratic and disciplined like an army. When the Syrian civil war broke out in 2011, he exploited the chaos to expand his influence, declaring the formation of ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq, and al-Sham, a brutal terrorist organization that surpassed all limits of violence and massacre. In June 2014, in the middle of the city of Mosul, al-Baghdadi appeared in public for the first time. Wearing a black robe, he stepped onto the pulpit of the Al-Nuri Mosque and declared himself Caliph Ibrahim, the successor of the Islamic State. At that moment, the world was shaken. A terrorist empire was officially born, controlling territory stretching from Raqqa in Syria to Mosul in Iraq, an area almost the size of a nation. There they established their own ruling apparatus with an army, laws, taxes, and public executions everywhere. Under al-Baghdadi's command, ISIS spread terror across the Middle East and around the world. They massacred the Yazidis in Sinjar, executed prisoners, filmed the killings, and released them online as cold-blooded propaganda. Women were taken as slaves, and children were forced to carry weapons. A series of bombings struck Paris, Brussels, Istanbul, and dozens of other cities, taking the lives of thousands and forcing millions of civilians to flee their homes in despair. After witnessing bin Laden's propaganda impact, Washington's national security leadership, the White House, the Department of Defense, the intelligence agencies, and CENTCOM issued a clear directive that al-Baghdadi must be killed on sight. If captured alive, he could become a symbol for the extremist movement. A public trial could turn him into a martyr in the eyes of the fanatics. And most importantly, any ISIS rescue attempt would cause hundreds of civilian deaths. Therefore, with al-Baghdadi, the United States did not choose to capture him, but chose to eliminate him. By December 2016, the US State Department offered a $25 million reward for information on him, the highest amount on record, equal to that for Osama bin Laden. But al-Baghdadi disappeared without a trace, with no means of communication. The world regarded him as a symbol of global terrorism. For Washington, there was only one option: to eliminate him completely, not to allow him to survive and escape. For many years, al-Baghdadi was nearly erased from the map. He appeared at night, then disappeared as if he had never existed. To the CIA, he was nothing more than a ghost, left only as rumor and the traces of blood after each attack. By mid-May 2019, everything changed when al-Baghdadi's brother-in-law, Muhammad Ali Sajet al-Zubai, a trusted movement facilitator, was captured by Iraqi intelligence in the outskirts of Baghdad with forged documents. He had joined ISIS in 2015, specializing in helping al-Baghdadi evade pursuit across the desert. At first, he remained completely silent, but after several days of interrogation, one unexpected detail was finally revealed. Al-Baghdadi may be in Idlib, near the Turkish border. That statement drew the CIA's attention because Idlib was not under ISIS control, but under the authority of other opposing rebel groups. This meant that he was hiding among his own enemies, in a place no one would have imagined. From there, Iraqi, US, and allied intelligence teams began to dig deeper. By mid-September 2019, the smuggling network of a close associate, Abu Mohammed al-Halabi, nicknamed the Border Smuggler, was being monitored and infiltrated. He was a commander of Huras al-Din, an opposition rebel faction in Idlib. He specialized in transporting wives, children, assets, and communications between senior ISIS leaders via smuggling routes into Turkey. Baghdadi's use of this network to move his family into Idlib inadvertently exposed his location, helping intelligence narrow the target down to the village of Barisha, specifically to a compound owned by al-Halabi. Throughout September and early October 2019, the intelligence teams jointly analyzed hundreds of hours of surveillance data. They identified a suspicious logistics route in the northern part of Idlib province, where trucks carrying food, medicine, and fuel frequently entered and left the village of Barisha, a remote settlement located about 5 kilometers from the Turkish border. Among them, a green Hyundai vehicle drew particular attention. It repeated the same route in a regular cycle, always stopping in front of a compound with walls nearly 4 meters high, a silver metal roof, and a sealed steel gate guarded with great caution. The compound was completely isolated among olive fields, with no neighbors, no power lines, and no antenna masts connected to the outside. Satellite images from October 14th to 22nd, 2019 showed signs of regular activity inside. Children were playing in the yard, a few large dogs were let loose, and there were always 3 to 5 armed men moving around the area. Yet the house had no internet connection, no cell phone signal, no radio signal, a silent zone perfect for the hideout of terrorist leaders. To verify, the CIA used low-flying reconnaissance drones. From the infrared camera, they observed a man with a limp who avoided light and appeared only at night. His build, height, and movements matched the descriptions of witnesses who had met al-Baghdadi. These details matched almost completely with the satellite imagery and infrared data the CIA was monitoring. At that point, everything was ready for the final strike. On October 25th, 2019, the CIA submitted a comprehensive intelligence report to the White House. DNA analysis from a pair of underwear stolen by a Kurdish spy during a previous raid in eastern Syria showed a 99.9% match with al-Baghdadi's biological sample stored by the United States since his detention at Camp Bucca. When all the pieces aligned, the Pentagon officially concluded, "We have found him." Around 5 p.m. in Washington on October 26th, which was the early morning of October 27th in Syria, U.S. President Donald Trump officially approved an action plan codenamed Operation Kayla Mueller, named after Kayla Jean Mueller, an American aid worker who was kidnapped by ISIS in Aleppo in 2013 and killed in 2015. Just hours later, the elite Delta Force Task Unit, together with supporting Ranger forces, were mobilized. They departed from al-Assad, Iraq, flying across the Syrian border in MH-60 Black Hawk and MH-47 Chinook helicopters, beginning the operation to eliminate the most wanted terrorist leader on the planet. 0030, Syrian time. As the night settled in, the helicopters lifted off from the base. On board, the soldiers checked their weapons, equipment, and final commands. No one spoke much. Everyone understood clearly that they had only one chance. And tonight, they would end a pursuit that had lasted nearly a decade. The chosen force consisted of top JSOC units. The 1st SFODD, Delta Force, spearheading the mission, supported by the 75th Ranger Regiment, while the 165th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, SOAR, handled helicopter transport. The formation included about 8 aircraft, a mix of MH-60 Blackhawks and MH-47 Chinooks, carrying nearly 70 operators. The formation flew through complex airspace. The total flight time to the insertion point about 70 minutes. The destination located in Idlib province near the Turkish border. En route, reconnaissance aircraft and drones provided real-time imagery, while escort helicopters stood ready to deliver suppressive fire if attacked. 1:10 a.m. Syrian time on October 27, 2019. U.S. helicopters flew at low altitude with all lights off, silently approaching the target area. When they were a few hundred meters from al-Baghdadi's hideout, all helicopters maintained an average altitude of about 65 to 100 feet. Engines throttled back, hovering while awaiting the signal to land. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from 2 positions to the west and southeast. About 2 to 5 HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham fighters, one group from a nearby vehicle, and the other from a neighboring house, opened fire with AK-47s, their rounds ripping across the helicopter fuselages. Immediately, the flight crews detected the coordinates through infrared sensors. The supporting helicopters returned fire with rotating barrages, including Hellfire missiles from the gunships and miniguns mounted on the transport platforms. Both firing positions were neutralized within seconds. When the area was secured, the formation descended to 10 meters and sequentially dropped operators at the landing zone about 500 meters south of the compound. Rotor wash swept up dust and debris, obscuring visibility, part of the plan to create visual interference. Delta Force immediately deployed a cordon. One team took the outer line, the other moved up against the main wall. Those inside the compound heard the engines and suppressive fire clearly. 2 gate guards fired back but were killed instantly by precise bursts. In less than 3 minutes, the perimeter was completely under U.S. control. Inside the compound, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was with his wife and children. He was startled awake by the sharp explosions and flashes of light in the distance. Realizing something was terribly wrong, he hastily gathered a few belongings and ordered his family to prepare to leave. When the outer area was fully secured, the Delta Force commander ordered the team to use a loudspeaker to call on the women and children inside the compound to surrender. The message was repeated 3 times in Arabic through the voice of a Kurdish interpreter. "Women and children, come out. You will not be harmed." A group of 11 people, mostly women and young children, left the house through the main entrance and were escorted by U.S. forces to a secured area about 100 meters away for screening and protection. However, al-Baghdadi and 2 other children remained inside, holding out with a few loyal fighters. Fearing that the main entrance might be rigged with explosives, the force did not use the doorway, but instead conducted a controlled directional breach through the north wall of the compound, creating an opening large enough for entry while avoiding structural collapse. After the explosion, the assault team split into 2 elements, clearing each room according to standard rapid combat procedures, moving carefully to ensure no corner was left unchecked. The blast echoed throughout the compound, shaking the entire structure. He shouted, giving orders to his family and guards, then hurriedly pulled 2 small children with him down into the underground tunnel at the rear. Meanwhile, the sound of military dogs barking echoed down, signaling that US forces were closing in. From above, the drone recorded unusual movements on the ground floor area, detecting at least 3 heat sources moving downward. It was Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Command confirmed that the primary target had begun to flee. The Delta Force assault teams immediately shifted from containment to assault, taking each room from north to south. Drones and military dogs were deployed simultaneously to track heat and sound signatures. When the 3 heat sources were seen descending, they confirmed that Baghdadi had entered the tunnel and immediately sealed all western and southern exits. During the sweep, they discovered several individuals wearing suicide vests, all of whom were neutralized before detonation. Some rooms contained light weapons, documents, and cash, indicating that this was not only a hideout but also a temporary command center for ISIS. Upon discovering the tunnel, the Special Operations Forces immediately deployed an EOD robot and the military dog Conan, both equipped with head-mounted cameras and thermal sensors, to scout ahead. The objective was to detect explosive traps and locate Baghdadi without risking any soldier's life. Underground, the tunnel was narrow and winding, only wide enough for a crouched person to move through. The air was thick with dampness and the smell of explosives. Baghdadi pulled the 2 children with him, trying to find a turn, but every path led to a dead end. Above, US special operators lowered the reconnaissance robot and the dog first, probing for traps before advancing meter by meter through the confined passage. The sound of footsteps, heavy breathing, and faint cries of children echoed through the headsets of the pursuing team. They could clearly hear Baghdadi shouting, seemingly trying to keep anyone from approaching. As the infrared light began to illuminate the tunnel's end, he suddenly stopped. Baghdadi realized there was no way out. In front of him was a wall of earth. Behind him, the glow of infrared lights was drawing closer. In panic, he pulled the 2 children close, gasping for breath, then pulled the pin on his explosive vest. Immediately after, a massive explosion occurred, equivalent to 7 to 10 kilograms of TNT, collapsing the entire final section of the 60-meter tunnel as soil and debris came crashing down in a cloud of dust. Baghdadi and the 2 children were killed instantly, their bodies severely destroyed. Thanks to the EOD robot and the dog Conan scouting ahead, the Special Operations team avoided casualties and quickly withdrew. The Delta Force operators paused the assault and switched to EOD Level 2 procedures to check the structural safety, then dispatched a rescue team to approach. At 1:32, the Sensitive Site Exploitation (SSE) team began to examine the tunnel area. From the debris, they recovered body parts believed to belong to Baghdadi. A DNA sample was taken on site using the Department of Defense's portable rapid DNA system and immediately compared with the biological sample collected from a pair of pants he had worn in 2004. The result was a 100% match, confirming high-value target HVT-01 Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi has been eliminated. The teams continued searching the entire compound. They seized more than 12 electronic devices, including laptops, hard drives, and phones, along with a large number of documents, maps, and USB drives containing data on ISIS's communication network. 2 adult male suspects were captured for further intelligence extraction. At 2:50, after completing all ground operations, the Delta Force and Ranger units began to withdraw from the Berisha compound. Around 3:10, the entire flight group exited Syrian airspace. Immediately after the Special Operations Forces withdrew safely, the Pentagon ordered the final phase of the mission, an airstrike to erase all traces and completely destroy the compound where Baghdadi had been hiding. A few minutes later, 2 MQ-9 Reaper unmanned aircraft were dispatched to the area. Within minutes, they launched approximately 4 to 6 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles, collapsing the entire compound along with the tunnel network beneath. The intensity of the blasts leveled the compound, leaving a massive pile of rubble among the olive fields, with no structure left intact. The purpose of the airstrike was not only to destroy evidence, but also to prevent the site from becoming a shrine to martyrdom for extremists or a pilgrimage site for ISIS sympathizers. Once all targets had been erased from the map, the entire force returned to base, concluding Operation Kayla Mueller, one of the most precise, clean, and rapid counterterrorism operations in modern history. At 4:30 a.m. on October 27, 2019, President Donald Trump received a direct report from Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and key generals in the White House Situation Room. The Pentagon confirmed that the DNA test results from the site matched 100% with the biological data of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. At 9 a.m. in Washington, 4 p.m. in Syria, after receiving final verification, the White House decided to make the announcement public. President Trump appeared in a live global press conference declaring, "Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead. He died like a dog. He died like a coward." At the same time, the U.S. Department of Defense released an official statement under the codename Operation Kayla Mueller, announcing that the mission had been carried out by Delta Force and the 75th Ranger Regiment under the command of U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM. The death of al-Baghdadi was seen as the end of the Caliphate reign, which had lasted nearly 5 years, once controlling over 88,000 square kilometers of territory and 8 million people, closing one of the bloodiest chapters in the global war on terror.